Welcome to Cyborg 86. Miles is standing out by his new drift car. Says he wants to go drifting, so we'll have to catch some video of that. But today we're going to take the first step on seeing if we can mount this little body on the LDARC X43. And the first step is a big one. We're going to tear this puppy down, way down. I really love the style of this little body. Here it is on my X43, and since then I've scaled it down in the slicer and printed out a copy. Now it's much smaller than the body that came on the X43, so this is going to require major surgery. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck. And while we're at it, we're going to see if we can put this little printed gear cover on the X43. I found this out on Thingiverse and it looks like just the ticket. I know people are very concerned about that little gear showing, and someone else came up with a solution. I'm going to try it out. While it does look like it'll do the job, I wonder if it can be modified to be more of a skid as well. Let's carefully and gently pull this body off of here and unplug the wires, pop it apart, and we'll see what's inside. There's 2 wires to unplug for the steering and the motor, and then everything comes apart. Looks nice and clean inside. Very straightforward and, yeah, tiny. Has a small metal frame, gearbox in the middle, servo up front, and rear motor. The springs on there I think are too stiff and limit the travel. So when we're doing this project, we'll see if we can do something about that too. The electronics and the battery are all up high in this hard body. And that would account for why this thing has a high center of gravity and tips over easy. But boy, it sure looks nice. Now, I have no expectation that I'm just going to be able to slap the body on here and start driving. But I always like to see how it's going to look and maybe give myself a little motivation. As you can see, the front end rides quite a bit higher. Doesn't clear that body, so that's going to be a challenge. Not sure I can pull it off, but I am going to have to design a new frame, and that shouldn't be too hard. Done it before. I can also modify the body a little bit, widen it, shorten it, do those type of things. But the front shocks and the front part of that frame is going to be a challenge. I'll probably have to see if I can mount them front shocks way towards the back. It looks like there's a little room there, some clearance for the servo to travel if I move that part of the frame. Also, there are other servo options out there I could consider. The little screwdriver that comes with the truck is handy, but not as handy as another screwdriver. Though I'll hang on to it because I'm definitely going to need it later. So we'll start tearing this thing down a little bit more and see what's inside. Looks like the little ball ends need a special tool. This is a T2 size star bit. We can use that to get the ball ends off. So now I got one side of the chassis off and it's starting to hang loose. Looks like the servo is just taped in and it does have a little glue on there. Not really hot glue, it's kind of a hard, chunky, plasticky stuff. It'll pop out in a little bit. There's the chassis. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of that. I'll bring it in as a canvas into Fusion 360, and then I'll design a new one. Step 1 will be to go ahead and create it as the exact duplicate, and then step 2 will be to start modifying. I need to keep in mind the goal, and there it is. Really want to see this body on here. Let's move on over to the workbench and do a little more detailed work here. Hopefully that'll show up better on camera, and it'll be safer for me to not drop them screws. Want to keep track of those, that's for sure. There's a couple of screws holding in the electronics board from the inside, and there's a couple more back behind where the spare tire is and charging port. In addition to that, there's a couple of screws each holding on the front and rear bumpers. We'll need to take all those out. Since this is my first time doing this, I'm trying to take it nice and slow and careful. Apply leverage when needed, but not so much that I break it. And fortunately, nothing broke. Now I'm on the last 2 screws here, back by the spare tire and charging port area. And a little more leverage, needs to apply it on the rear, get that bumper off of there. I'm nervous, but it worked. To get the circuit board out of there, I got to press in them LED light covers just a little bit, get some clearance. And those are actually lenses that come clear out, so carefully and gently pry those out too. Am I almost there yet? Can I pull this board out yet? Yes. Finally. There we go. We got the board. There's the brains of the outfit. Got the battery there in its own little box. Looks like a 1 cell. And plugs in up above. So nice, we got a connector, we can pull it loose. So I'm going to be replacing this board, but I'm going to hang on to it. Maybe I can make a drift car or something out of it. Just use it for something else. But I hate to let stuff go to waste, so I'll find something to do with it. I have some other batteries, but maybe this one will work. Just putting it down lower. Might be able to make it ride up there on the front. Maybe on top of the servo. Those a little tight, might bind. We'll see. We got some options here. A little bit of room to work. And if I widen the body a little bit, maybe it can ride side saddle. Like a saddlebag right there on the side. Maybe the receiver and speed control on the other. I bagged up all the electronics, get them out of the way, keep them safe. Now we're working on tearing down to the mechanics. Get that chassis clear out, and now we've got a couple of axles, a chassis, and a bunch of little screws. Now I'm having a look here at the servo. This is a 1.7 G servo, and compared to the original, it's actually smaller than the original. So there's an option. I'm not sure I'd want to go that small, how fragile it would be, but it might be an option. So I think I'll just stick with the original servo if possible. The AS01 servo out of the Axial just dwarfs this thing. It looks like a monster in there. Definitely not an option. Let's get a look at this transmission now. Got a tiny little motor and some gears in there that I can just see, and it gives me some ideas. Here's the G20 gear motor that I use in my little semi and truck builds. This one's dual output, but it looks like it might be close. We'll have a look at another option here in a second. Brushless. This is a single output shaft like would be needed, and the gearbox looks to be at closer size. We'll tear this down just a little bit more and have a look, but brushless motor might be an option. In fact, the output shafts looks to be the exact same size, so we're going to test that. A little more careful and gentle leverage needs to be applied here, and we'll get that gear off of there. Yep, that gear goes right on. This opens up the doors of some possibilities, either with an N20 with a single output, or even a brushless. I can see some more gears back up inside of there, so let's get this motor and gearbox out of its holder. There's 2 screws holding the motor to the gearbox. And then once you get them out, they're partially covered, so you kind of got to work your way around them. I think it's to hold the screws in during assembly. But they're partially covered, but you can still reach them. And once you get them out, the motor will come out. And this is a pretty common looking little motor. I think that's just a mount on the end with the pinion, no further gears inside of there. But this little gearbox looks very familiar. Looks like the end of a gearbox that comes on an N20 motor. So we'll press that out and have a look. Sure enough, now the doors of opportunity is starting to open. An N20 motor ought to bolt right to that, as well as that little brushless motor I showed you. So now we got some options. Even if we don't replace the motor, we could replace the gearbox. Gear it up or gear it down, using the gearboxes off of an N20 motor. So this ought to get fun here as soon as I start this build. Since we've come this far, let's go ahead and tear the axle down. Have a look at what's inside. The servo is just held on by a combination of tape and glue, so that's easy to reproduce. Gonna need that T2 star tool again. And there we have it. Just a couple of bevel gears. Looks to be 1-to-1 ratios. They're the same size. I really didn't need to tear this down. Just did it to show you. I don't think it'll go together near as easily as it came apart. Patience. Last thing I'll show you here is this little screw set I bought. These are all self-tapping. They range from M1.0 to M1.6 in varying lengths. These things have a tendency to get away, so it'd sure be good to have some of these on hand before you do a teardown like this. But those little ball ends, hang on to those puppies. Well, if you'd like to see how this project goes, I hope you'll subscribe, maybe give a like. Thanks for watching and happy crawling.
I saw your new car, your fancy shoes, and everybody saying you're big news. But think it over.
Say goodbye, Miles.
Ain't more to like.